I drove the Texas back roads through midnight thinking I'd beat the sun home and catch Rachel off guard in a good way. The porch light was dark. The bedroom light wasn't. I eased the door boots in my hand. No shout. No scene. Just the lamp throwing warm color on pale skin, two bodies bare in our bedsheets, half-off clothes scattered like confetti on the floor. A cowboy hat sat on my chair, her wedding band not on her hand, but shining on the dresser, my chest turned to stone. I didn't swing. I didn't break a thing. I put my thumb on record and let the phone do what men like me rarely do, keep a clean line to the truth. I'm not a saint. I'm not crazy. I'm a working man who carries weight, pays bills, comes home hoping for quiet, and tonight I got naked facts instead. Anger rose. My hands shook. Forgive divorce. Smash the phone or keep the proof that might save my future. Men keep it quiet. Pain doesn't. Mine got loud that night. If you've stood in a doorway like that, stick around. And if this hits you in the gut, follow so you don't miss what comes next. Coming off that doorway moment, I did what a lot of men do when the noise gets too loud. You put the road under you and let the miles scrub your head clean. US 281 cut through the hill country like a quiet promise. Mesquite limestone fence posts ticking by like a metronome. I kept the rig steady, thinking about Bill's routes and how a man can do most things right and still end up staring at a truth he didn't ask for. The dash lit soft in the dark. I watched the temp needle climb one notch, then two. I've run fuel long enough to know the smell of trouble's sweet, sharp coolant like hot metal and regret. I eased off the throttle, rolled a shoulder, tried to will the gauge back down. Didn't work. Steam feathered out from under the hood, the way breath fogs on a winter window. I thought of my dad's old fix-anything F-150 of duct tape hose clamps and stubborn luck. The hill country doesn't negotiate, though. I needed a place to pull off fast. The turn onto TX-16 felt like a mercy exit. Gravel hissed under the tires as I spotted a white farmhouse set back behind a plank fence porch light off Windmill. Still, the kind of place that belongs to someone who works before daylight and sleeps when the land allows it. I eased the rig onto a patch of calichet and killed the engine. The sudden silence rang in my ears. That's when they appeared, two big shepherds, dark coats, bright eyes, tails level, no barking, just watching. I know that look. Country dogs don't waste noise. They read your shoulders. I kept my hands open, boots careful on the steps, and called out the way my father taught me, clear, respectful, nothing sudden. The porch boards had that sun-cured creak to them. A fan hummed somewhere inside. For a second, I figured I'd just refill a jug and limp the truck to Kerrville. Then a shape moved behind the screen, the dog's ears twitched, and I saw a hand on the latch, steady, not scared. Whoever owned this house wasn't afraid of much. She pushed the screen wide like she'd done it 1,000 times, a woman used to weather and problems. "Evening," she said, voice low, not sweet. Blue eyes level. "Dogs'll leave you be if you act right." She snapped 2 words, and those shepherds, Duke and Daisy I'd learned, sat like carved statues. I told her my name, kept it simple, radiator hose, blue, need water, maybe a place to cool off the truck. No big story, no drama. She handed me a cold glass and took my measure, the way ranch folks do. Boots, hands the way you stand when something's broken. You're not the first man a mile short of a part, she said. Faint smile. No, flirt in it. There's a scrap pile out back. Hoses, clamps, odds and ends. If you can make it work, it's yours. That's competence talking, not charity. The dog shifted to the side as she stepped onto the porch, sun catching the dust on her jeans like gold. A lot of men my age will understand this. Sometimes the right voice at the right time steadies you better than any sermon. I drank slow, felt the cold run heat out of me, then asked for what I really needed, something flexible to bridge a split-line clamps if she had 'em. She nodded once permission granted and told Duke and Daisy to heel. They did right on her boot heels like 2 shadows with teeth. We walked past the barn where a row of old iron slept under tarps. Fairlane's a Ford pickup that kind of stubborn metal men tell stories about. Take what helps, she said. Out back, I found the boneyard cut hose. Worm clamps, a length of braided line that might just marry up to my fittings. Nothing pretty, but pretty doesn't get you home. I could hear my dad again. Son, most fixes are patience, not parts. I laid everything on a tailgate alter knife, pliers, flathead, and took inventory the way you do before a small surgery. She didn't hover, just stood there in the shade, that quiet presence that lets a man work without feeling judged. Somewhere in the trees, a cicada lit off like a starter pistol. Under the hood, steam ghosted away and left the truth a ragged split where heat finally won. I cut the bad section clean, worked the braided hose onto the nipple, cinched the clamps until the screwdriver bit. Hands know when tight is tight enough. My shirt stuck to my back. The fan belt whistled once as the engine cooled. Moment of truth. I said to no one, but she heard me anyway. Hannah passed me a jug, cold beating, and I poured slow burped the line, watched for drips like a man watching a card turn. No leaks. I slid into the seat, turned the key, and the motor came back like a cow that always finds the gate. Needle climbed, settled. I waited another minute, then two, because men my age learn to trust results, not hope. Out the windshield, that white house stood quiet against a sky the color of old denim. I shut it down and stepped out. "You're good at what you do," she said like a verdict. "I've heard praise and I've heard noise." This wasn't noise. "Wash up and eat," she added. "Then roll." And that sounded a lot like Grace. "Wash up and eat," she'd said, and Grace sounded a lot like a clean towel, a tin basin on the porch, and the smell of supper drifting out of a real kitchen. An hour later, the truck sat cooled and quiet, clamps holding hose snug. Dusk slid down over the hill country, purpling the live oaks, and the first crickets started their shift. Hannah propped the screen door with her hip and nodded me in like I'd been there before. Duke and Daisy took posts by the table, heads low, eyes, hopeful manners, better than most people I knew. She set out plates the way working folks do, no fuss, just enough. I'm a man who's eaten in more truck stops than I can count, and even a good plate can feel like a transaction. This didn't. It felt like somebody deciding you were worth a chair. I stood there a second too long, hat in hand, trying to remember the last time I'd sat down to a meal that wasn't rushed. "It'll get cold," she said. I took the chair. Something in me unclenched. I meant to wave it off, polite thanks, hit the road. Keep feeling simple. But the room said otherwise. Smoke from the grill still hung in the boards. The cast iron hissed when she shifted the chops, and the cornbread steamed when she cracked it open, butter pooling like gold. Mashed potatoes held their shape the way a good fence line holds a pasture. Collards and black-eyed peas wore enough seasoning to say someone cared. I told myself I'd take a bite and move along, make Kerrville before full dark. One bite turned into two, then a plate cleared without small talk or apology. Men my age know hunger that isn't about food. Quiet, steady, not dramatic. Just a gap you've driven around for years. Hannah didn't fill it with chatter. She asked what the rig pulled, what roads I liked, which stations treated drivers fair. The dogs got their taste tails thumping once in unison like a blessing you don't deserve. When she poured coffee, I stopped pretending. "Thank you," I said, and heard in my own voice that I meant more than supper. We ate without hurry, the way winter nights used to last forever when I was a kid, and my father sharpened knives after dinner just because it was a good time to tend to edges. Hannah listened the way mechanics listen to a knock. No judgment, just sorting sounds. I told her the simple parts, long routes, early mornings, the math of fuel and time. Left out the storm still moving around inside me. She filled the spaces with stories that smelled like alfalfa and saddle soap, calves that wouldn't come. A gelding that finally trusted her hands, a fence mended in wind strong enough to bend talk back into your mouth. It wasn't flirting. It was two people comparing notes on whether and where. When she put bread pudding on the table, cinnamon in the air, I felt a strange thing I couldn't deny, like a place had recognized me and pulled up a chair before I knew I needed one. Men don't say home lightly, but something in that kitchen held the word without making it heavy. I rinsed my plate, thanked her again, and the night met me clean at the door. The rig turned over smooth. The new hose held like it had a reason to. I told Hannah I'd make good time, maybe roll past Bourne before the radio went to static, and she said, "Watch for deer," like someone who's picked glass out of tires before. I pulled on to TX16 tires, whispering on the caliche, and the white house shrank in the mirrors until it was a square of light, then a dot, then a memory already arguing to stay. I don't fall easy, not at my age, but I knew what that meal had done, put air back in a lung I thought was working fine. I tried to set my jaw and drive like it was just another night. The farther I got, the more the rearview felt like a question I didn't want to answer. I could almost taste cinnamon over diesel. And then as the road opened up and the miles should have gotten simple, the past caught up Rachel hard as a fist on a closed door. That hit of her name in my chest brought back the clean version of us no dents yet. Rachel was 20-something, sharp as a fresh pencil hair pulled back, sleeves rolled accounting books stacked like bricks she could climb. We met over coffee that tasted like burnt toast and somehow talked an extra hour about nothing that still felt like something. She laughed easy but not cheap. I remember the way she counted out change once at a church fundraiser, fast, neat, honest, and thinking that's a woman who won't let life get sloppy. I was hauling fuel, then knocking miles off old roads, trying to stack enough paychecks to prove I could carry weight without complaining. We weren't fancy. Quick dinners, late-night TV, cheap beer on the back steps. Still, it felt like we'd found the part of the world that would hold still for us. I told myself if I just kept my head down and my word good, the rest would sort itself out. It did for a while. Then the good times sped up in a way that hid the warning signs. When it came time, we did what folks like us do. We kept it simple and outside. Live oaks for ceiling folding chairs, barbecue smoke, curling like a blessing nobody charged for. My buddy played guitar, her Aunt Linda handled the cake, and the preacher kept it short, like he knew the heat was a guest too. Rachel looked like the best version of the life I wanted. Plain, good, not covered in glitter. We said vows we meant because we didn't have much else to spend. Rings were modest, hands were steady families, smiling the small smiles of people who worked all week to show up clean on Saturday. The photos came back with sun flare and dust motes floating like confetti we could afford. After we drove the back roads with the windows down, radio low, and promised each other things we couldn't fully see yet, but believed in anyway. If you've ever stood there, you know the feeling you're broke, happy, and convinced you can outwork anything. For a long stretch we did. And then we chased bigger because that's what you do. We found a little wood-sided place outside Bourne, a porch just big enough for 2 chairs and a stubborn grill, a patch of dirt that begged for tomatoes, and a shed with a door that stuck unless you hip-checked it. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and ours can carry a man through more nights than folks admit. I learned the rhythm of that house, the way the AC kicked like an old mule at 2 a.m., the way the floor complained near the hall, the way Rachel hummed when she paid bills at the kitchen table, tapping a pen like a metronome for grown-ups. We painted trim on Sundays and argued about paint colors like we had a decorator's budget. We didn't. First Christmas, we strung cheap lights that made the place look like it believed in itself. Early years are kind like that, thin on money, thick on intention. We stacked small wins, paid down a card, fixed a leak, saved for a better mattress. The house taught us to be a team. Later, it taught us what teams look like when one player drifts. Work got real. I took longer routes, earlier mornings, and the kind of overtime that looks good on paper but eats the edges off a man. Fuel doesn't care if it's a holiday. It wants moving when it wants moving. I'd leave before dawn, come back after dark, and memorize the shape of Rachel's silhouette in the window more than her face across a table. She was grinding 2 classes, then night shifts at the hospital, then somehow both at once. We talked in pass-throughs, sticky notes on the fridge, texts about who grabbed milk, missed calls with tired apologies. You tell yourself it's a season. You tell yourself grown-up love is part-time sometimes. And some weeks that's true. But there's a math to tired that steals more than hours. I'd catch her asleep on the couch with a laptop open, reports half finished, and tuck a blanket over her like I could cover the gap. She'd leave me coffee with my name on it like she could pour back what the road took. We meant well. Meaning well doesn't always stop the slow drift. Then the money shifted. Rachel's degree hit and her hospital checks started matching mine, sometimes beating them. I was proud, no lie. A man who's scared of a strong wife isn't ready for a real one, but pride has a shadow if you don't watch it. And so does the schedule. Her shifts spun like a carnival wheel, days, evenings, weekends, while mine ran straight lines across a map. We tried to meet in the middle and mostly missed. Date nights got rescheduled until they vanished. Sundays felt like Tuesdays. We learned new words for late. Just 15 more. One more chart. They're short tonight. The house got quieter and not the peaceful kind. You know this if you've lived it. 2 good people, 1 kitchen table, and a stack of calendars that refuse to agree. I told myself we were building a future. Maybe we were. But futures don't hug you back after a long shift. And somewhere between her second promotion and my 3rd route change, I felt the first small crack under my boots. The kind you only hear if you stop and listen. We didn't. When you don't stop to listen for cracks, you crank the music instead, and for us that meant Saturdays at the Country Dance Hall in New Braunfels. Neon horseshoes over the bar, long neck bottles sweating on high tops wood floor, scuffed by 1,000 boots that knew how to turn a rough week into something you could live with. Our friends showed the way, couples who fought on Thursday and two-stepped on Saturday, laughing like the slate got wiped clean. We'd roll in late, Rachel glowing from a good shift, me shaking the road out of my shoulders. The band hit a waltz, then a fast one, then a line dance that made the room move like a single animal. For a while, that was enough counting beats. Together feels like agreeing about something bigger than chores and calendars. I told myself, see, we're fine. We're with our people. We're making memories. It's amazing what a steel guitar can paper over, but even a forgiving floor can't hold what you won't name. I didn't know it yet. I thought the music had us covered. The hall had a custom that felt harmless. You trade partners on a song or two, tip your hat, send her back smiling. It's neighborly, like borrowing a socket set and returning it clean. I went along because everyone did. Rachel loved its spun light hands, sure, steps tidy like the way she kept our books. I danced with friends' wives, coworkers, the nurse who always laughed too loud at the drummer's jokes. Nobody crossed a line. Or maybe we couldn't see the line yet. Men my age know this truth: most trouble doesn't arrive like a storm. It sidles up like a friend of a friend. The band called a slow number, steel crying fiddle, soft as apology, and the circle opened. I saw Rachel dip to someone else's lead, the kind of lean couples use when they trust the next step will be there. My jaw ticked once. Then I told myself the rule I'd been living by: don't make weather out of wind. I let it pass. I smiled when she came back. I was proud of being the calm one. Then came the moment I can still rewind in my head, clean as footage. A man I didn't recognize stepped close to Rachel, hat tipped back, easy grin, like he'd been born under stage lights. The song slowed, the crowd thinned, and he leaned in too near for a stranger saying something that made her laugh in that bright way I used to take personally. It wasn't dirty. It wasn't even obvious. It was the kind of inside tone you earn over time, delivered by someone who hadn't. My chest pinched quick and sharp like a pulled muscle you pretend isn't there. I told myself, be decent. This is a dance hall, not a courtroom. Folks talk close over steel guitar, and she's allowed to smile. Men who carry weight learn not to turn every twitch into a fire. So I swallowed it. I tipped my bottle to the band. I made room for the lie that keeps a lot of peace if you didn't see a boundary crossed. Maybe there wasn't one, but something small shifted under my boots again. I kept the good man posture, shoulders loose, hands light, no scenes. I danced with a friend's wife who smelled like dryer sheets and church mints, told a joke that landed, and felt the room accept me as steady. That's a drug too, being the reasonable one. When the song ended, I caught Rachel's eye across the floor. She gave me the smile we used to trade when rent was due, and we paid it anyway. I sent one back, counted that as proof we were okay. But the band slipped into another slow track, the kind that makes 1,000 strangers believe in the same line of words, and he was there again. I watched his hand hover at the small of her back, the exact way mine does when I'm careful with her. He didn't press. He didn't have to. My stomach did that old truck misfire. I checked my pride, checked my temper, checked the room for reasons to unclench. You want to talk yourself out of trouble you can't name. You want to be the man who doesn't flinch. I was. It cost me. I didn't know his name until later. That night, he was just the hat, the grin, the close talker. But every story has a moment when the camera rack focuses and the background turns sharp. Ours did at the bar while the band took 5, and the ice machine groaned like an old bull. He slid in next to me with that casual confidence some men wear like cologne. She leads easy, he said, not looking at me, eyes on Rachel, ordering waters for both of us. Name's Cole Bennett. He offered a hand I didn't take because mine was on my bottle, and I'm superstitious about first moves. I gave him a nod. A man can read 100 ways. He smiled like he'd picked one. Rachel turned, handed me a glass, and said his name like she'd said it before. Maybe at work. Maybe just now. Doesn't matter. Names are anchors or loose lines, and this one landed between us with a quiet thud. I told myself again we were fine, but a fault line doesn't ask permission to be a fault line. And because fault lines like company, that's when Ashley Carter slid in with a smile that had fixed more than one rough Friday. She's Rachel's friend, the one who always finds your good side in a photo and gets you another round before you think to say yes. "Dance," she asked, already close enough to smell the lime on her glass. The band eased into a slower groove, and the floor opened like it was waiting on our answer. I took half a step back, palms up, friendly, not cold. "Appreciate it, Ash. I'm gonna sit this one out." She laughed and closed the gap anyway. Hand on my forearm, warm as a promise nobody made. Men my age know that look. It isn't trouble yet, but it wants to be. I kept my voice easy. "I'm married, and I aim to stay that way," said with enough respect to land soft enough steel to hold. She rolled her eyes like I'd turned down a church bake sale. "Your loss," she said and winked. "Maybe, but some lines you paint once and guard forever." The song swelled. The room shifted. Walking off a dance is quiet work. No applause, no high five. Just your boots finding the rail and your back to the neon while you let your pulse settle. I ordered water, not because I'm righteous, but because I needed a clear head more than a warm blur. Ashley floated away, found a laugh somewhere else, and I let it go. Men don't get credit for the trouble we don't start, and that's fine. I'm not keeping a ledger, I'm keeping my life. I thumbed my phone out of habit, checked a route update, and looked up just as the band tucked a minor chord into something sweeter. That's when I saw it. The thing you hope you won't. Rachel back in the crowd, and Cole right there with her. Close as breath, easy as you please. Like he'd skipped the part where a man earns the right to stand that near. I set the glass down without drinking. My chest did that small, mean tighten. Saying no to temptation felt simple 10 seconds ago. Now I was looking at a different kind. By the time I edged back toward the floor, Cole had his palm hovering at the small of Rachel's back, guiding her like he'd practiced on 100 Saturdays before this one. It wasn't a grab. That almost would have been easier. It was respectful in the way that stings worse, like he knew exactly how to make it look harmless. Rachel laughed the laugh I used to think belonged to our kitchen on a good night, not to a room full of strangers and light beer. I read the room, not a fight crowd, not a scene. I put a hand on my belt, felt the change in my pocket, reminded myself that money and temper spend fast and leave you broke. When the song ended, Rachel found me with bright eyes and a flush that said she'd had a good time. I could have asked 1,000 questions. I asked none. She beat me to the first line anyway, casual as weather. "Don't look at me like that," she said. "It's a dance hall, Jack." The band kicked another slow one. My jaw set. She got ahead of me with a half smile I knew from long bills and short paychecks. Jealous. He's just an old friend. The way people say just when they want the topic to die on the vine. I let the word hang between us and watched it try to shrink the moment. "Old friend," I repeated, tasting it like a new brand that might be cheap. I wanted the easy story as much as she did neighbor's borrowed dance, nothing to see. I've been the man who makes storms out of breezes. I've paid for that version of myself. So I tried the other man, the one who trusts, who doesn't embarrass his wife in public, who saves hard talks for quieter rooms. "Have a good time," I said, and meant it halfway. She nodded, relieved to be understood or relieved to be dismissed. Hard to say. We both looked up when the fiddle slid into a line that makes couples believe in second chances. She turned back toward the floor. I watched her go. The story we wanted walked with her. The story we had stayed with me. If Rachel's words were a blanket, Cole's eyes were a match. He glanced over her shoulder and found me, didn't flinch, didn't apologize. It wasn't a dare, not outright. It was worse, the calm of a man who thinks the ground already belongs to him. Men know that look from job sites and parking lots and the wrong side of a handshake. It says, "I see you, and I'm not moving." My spine did that old, simple math dignity safety witness. I kept my hands easy, shoulders down. Nothing a bouncer could circle. But inside, the needle moved. The band lifted into a chorus that made the whole room sing one word, like they believed it. I didn't sing. I watched Cole's hand hover again, then land the way you set a glass on a table you planned to keep using. Maybe he thought I'd play the good man forever. Maybe he thought I didn't know where the line was. I did. The question wasn't if there was a line. It was how far he planned to step over it and how long I'd let him. That look from Cole didn't leave me, and it seemed like the room felt it too, especially when Rachel started leaning harder into the tequila. Not one drink, not a toast. Rounds. Salt, lime, laugh, repeat. At first, it loosened the week off her shoulders the way a good night should. Then the edges went fuzzy. She'd tilt her head back on a song like the ceiling had a secret only she could hear. The floor forgives a lot, but liquor keeps its own score. I watched her dance, a step fast, Then to a heel catch a shrug, a who cares, and the crowd ate it up. I told myself she'd earned a night to blow off steam. Men like me will run trust like a credit card, tap it again, and pray the bank doesn't call. Cole stayed in orbit, never grabbing, always there like a porch light that refuses to burn out. I measured the distance from the bar to the door, from my pride to my temper, and tried to keep both on a leash. You can love someone and see the warning lights at the same time. It was a friend of hers who dropped it too much tequila, too little filter voice pitched to share and sting at once. We were on the patio catching air neon flickering on the metal chairs when she leaned in like a conspirator and grinned Rachel's lucky. She's got 2 men. She laughed at her own punchline, but even her face knew it had said too much. I smiled the way men do when they're not going to give a crowd a show. I even let a chuckle out light and careless like she told me the weather. Inside, something heavy hit the floor and didn't bounce. 2 men. You can file that under rumor joke misunderstanding, or you can file it under the part of you that already knows. I stared past her at the parking lot at the long black stripe where trucks come and go and felt the simple math, start time, opportunity pattern. The band kicked back in and everyone moved toward the noise, grateful to leave still air behind. I didn't move. Bricks don't. They wait and hold weight. I carried that 2 men line like a cinder block tucked under my jacket. Back inside, I did the decent man dance, bought a round tip the band, nodded at the regulars, and let the night run to closing without a scene. On the drive home, the silence in the cab wasn't peaceful. It was the kind that stacks your thoughts in a line and dares you to read them. Men who work the road know this trick. You count mile markers to keep from counting what hurts. Still, the math wrote itself. Tuesdays, she was home. Wednesdays, I stayed over in another town, and Thursdays we met in the middle, both too tired to fight or fix. None of that proves a thing by itself, but patterns hum like a loose belt. Ignore it, and you'll be stranded. I parked in the driveway, stared at our porch light, and told myself to be careful with my story until I had more than a drunk woman's confession. Then I felt the other truth I didn't like. Sometimes the drunk tell it straight because they can't hold the weight sober. So I made it simple. I didn't become a detective. I became a husband who wanted the truth more than he wanted comfort. Tuesdays, Rachel said she stayed in TV, a call with her sister, and early bed. Tuesdays, I usually had a motel room a county over. Not this time. I took the long way back, killed my lights at the turn, and let the truck roll in easy, like a breath you don't want the room to hear. I parked where the street can't see, window cracked, radio off, phone face down. It wasn't courage. It was maintenance, like checking your oil before a long pull. The house sat dark, blinds closed, the kind of quiet that should calm a man. It didn't. A breeze rubbed the live oaks together and made a sound like rope under tension. Midnight came honest. I checked my watch, even though time wasn't the question. In the glass, I saw my own face stare back, tired, older than I felt. I wasn't out to catch her. I was out to stop lying to myself about what I already knew. Sometime after 12, the road wrote the answer. 2 beams crested the bend, slowed like they belonged, and turned into our drive with the confidence of habit. The shape was a pickup I recognized, even in shadow stance, a touch high, left tail light faint. The engine cut and the quiet got louder. The cab light blinked on, and I saw it plain, the cowboy hat on the dash. The profile I'd learned at the dance hall door opening, like it lived there. He didn't knock. The bedroom light answered before his boots hit the porch. I didn't move, didn't honk, didn't rush the door, didn't play hero for a crowd that wasn't there. I put my thumb on record and let the phone do what my voice couldn't without burning everything down. Inside the house, a lamp clicked. A shadow crossed the hall I helped paint. My hand shook once and then went still. There are nights that end a life. This one didn't. It ended the maybes. No more maybes meant no more noise. I clicked the headlights off and let the dark settle until the cab felt like part of the yard. Crickets sawed the night into thin strips. A barn owl called once and went quiet like even the woods were holding their breath. I kept mine steady. Men my age know this ritual. When you're about to walk into something you can't walk back out of, you make the world's small hands breath door handle. I checked my phone battery without looking at the screen. Thumb found the red dot I'd need later. The truck ticked as it cooled, each sound a reminder that heat always shows you where the pressure's been. In the house, a lamp blinked on, then off, then on again. Two shadows, crossing a hallway I'd painted in boots and old shorts one summer. I told myself one thing I could keep: no yelling, no breaking, no scene for anybody but the truth. Then I opened the door boots on gravel, soft as a prayer, and started toward the porch like a man who finally knows. At the threshold, I paused long enough to feel the wood remember me. The porch gave that same low creak it always had, the one I used to hear when Rachel stepped out to cool off a pie or take a call from her sister. Tonight, it announced me. Inside the hall, light threw thin gold across the floorboards and painted two clear shapes on the wall, hers and his. They weren't tangled now, just standing too close in a room that used to hold Sunday football and laundry baskets. Clothes trailed like breadcrumbs toward the bedroom. A hat sat crowned down on my chair. I could smell soap sweat and the faint sweet of her lotion that I'd bought at H-E-B without reading the label. People say shock scrambles your thoughts. Mine lined up. This was our house. That was my chair. Those were two bodies that had used up all their excuses. I felt the sting behind my eyes and let it pass. You don't let water blind you on a night that needs steady hands. The lamp hummed. My jaw set. Time to finish what I'd started. I slid my thumb over the screen and watched the red circle glow. No commentary, no throat clearing, just proof. The hallway felt longer than it ever had, like the house was stretching to test my nerve. I kept my boots on the runner to kill the noise and found the bedroom door cracked, the way we used to leave it for the dog. Not this time. I pushed it with 2 fingers and stepped in. The first thing I saw was Rachel's face folding in on itself like a tent that's lost its poles. The second was him, Cole, palming for his jeans like a burglar who'd picked the wrong address. Sheets were half gathered. The lamp caught our wedding photo in the corner and turned it into a witness. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't raise anything but the phone. Men talk a lot about respect. Sometimes it's as plain as not giving the other man your back. Don't he said, meaning the camera. I didn't answer. I planted my feet where I could brace and let the room get quiet enough to hear the record work. People can argue words for months. They can't outrun a face in the moment. Rachel went from white to red to the color of someone trying to breathe through a choke eyes, jumping between my phone and my hands like she could barter this back to normal. Cole went flat, no bluff, left skin the shade of old paper, the kind you sign bad deals on. He tried to square his shoulders and couldn't find where to set them. I'd expected rage to roar. It didn't. It came low-controlled, like a diesel at idle. I set the phone where it could see everything and moved 2 steps to the side to give them a choice they didn't deserve, speak or stand there. Rachel's mouth opened on my name and closed on excuses she could feel dying. The fan clicked overhead, counting the silence. I felt my pulse in my teeth, in my palms, in the old scar on my forearm where a wrench slipped years ago. If I spoke now, I'd lose the one thing I had left control. So I waited and let their faces do the talking. When I finally spoke, I didn't sermon, didn't list, didn't beg the past to behave. I asked the one question a man can live with in the morning. How many times? Not why. Not how could you. Count it. Put a number on it, so I know what I'm burying tonight. Rachel shook her head like that could erase math. Jack, please. I lifted one finger steady as a level. How many? The room shrank to her lips and that red dot. Cole stared at the carpet, tracing a stain with his eyes like it might offer a back door. Once she said too fast. The kind of fast that tastes like fear, not truth. I let the words sit there and echo. Once. I heard my dad's voice, not soft, not cruel. A man can forgive a mistake. He can't live with a habit. I picked up my phone, saved the file, and slipped it into my pocket like a tool I might need later. Get dressed, I said to him, still calm. To her, we're not done. But we're not lying anymore. The fan clicked. The record stopped. Her answer came like a pulled stitch. Quick, panicked, just once. It hung there, a little word, trying to carry a heavy thing. I didn't correct her. I didn't play prosecutor. I let the silence tell her what I already knew. Once can be an accident, or it can be a doorway. Either way, you don't get to stand there long. She reached for me, then for the sheet, then for a reason that might rewind the room. I kept my hands by my sides. Men think anger is loud. Sometimes it's a cold level floor you refuse to fall through. Cole was half-dressed, half-brave, eyes on the door, like he'd forgotten how doors work. I pointed with my chin. Outside. He moved clumsy, no swagger left. The phone in my pocket felt heavy as a toolbox. Proof changes a man's posture. Rachel whispered my name like a prayer and a warning at the same time. I didn't answer either one. In my head, I could hear my father's rule: don't decide everything at night. Decide enough to make morning possible. Out under the porch light, the air felt cleaner, meaner. Gravel under my boots, night insects sawing away like they were on a deadline. His truck sat there like it belonged. That was true until it wasn't. I didn't yell. I didn't preach. I let out what didn't need to be here, simple as taking weight off a bad axle. No spectacle, no audience. Just a message even a slow mind can read. You don't park your disrespect at my house. I hooked up my rig like I've done 1,000 times for folks who broke down. Honest eased his pickup off our drive and hauled it to a public lot where problems wait their turn. On the road back, I rolled the window down and let the night cut through the sweat on my neck. The stars above the hill country don't care who did what. They just keep showing up. I pulled in behind the house, killed the lights, and sat there until my breathing matched the crickets. Inside, a lamp still burned. I wasn't calmer. I was clearer. That's enough to get a man to dawn. Sun finds every mess eventually. It found ours over a half-cold coffee at the kitchen table we'd paid off $20 at a time. Rachel's eyes were swollen, her voice small the way shame shrinks a person who used to take up a room. I didn't rehearse a speech. I kept to the facts a man can say once and stand by later. Pack what you need. Stay at your sister's for now. She started the old soft story, how we were tired, how it got away from her, how she was sorry in ways that didn't change last night. I didn't throw it back at her. I didn't soften it for me. We're not deciding the rest today, I said. We're deciding this. She nodded like a student who didn't study, but respects the test anyway. I helped carry 2 boxes to the porch because I still know how to lift even when it hurts. When the door closed behind her, the house sounded different, lighter in the wrong places. I stood where the Christmas tree goes and felt the line I'd drawn hold. Separation has a rhythm. Calls you don't answer, letters you do, keys changing hands without ceremony. We tried a counselor mostly to prove we'd tried. The tape on my phone sat like a loaded shelf you don't open unless you have to. We talked twice without lawyers and once with them. Irreconcilable is a tidy word for a mess you can't mop. I kept the house. She took the sedan and the pieces of furniture that didn't carry our best fights. There's a way a man signs a divorce: steady pen, straight line, no flourish. You don't autograph endings. You acknowledge them. I walked out with a folder that said I was single and a backbone that said act like it. Nights got practical laundry when the hamper said so canned chili that tasted like Wednesday, a TV that talked too loud because I let it. The part nobody tells you is how competent you can feel and how empty that same competence can sound in an echoing room. Still, the ground under my boots felt honest again. Honest is a start. Starts invite visitors. So they came texts from Rachel that read like late homework calls from her mother, warm as a blanket you didn't ask for. And then my own mom, apron voice, turned up, telling me not to throw away a perfectly good marriage over one mistake. Good women love redemption stories. Men who live the plot know the cost of the sequel. I listened because I was raised right. I didn't budge because I was raised right. Mama, I'm not mad, I said. I'm finished. She heard what she wanted. Rachel showed up twice with dishes I used to brag on, trying to feed a hunger that wasn't in my stomach. I took the Tupperware, said thank you, and handed her the timeline I could live with: civil distant final. Some nights, I stood in the yard and let the porch lights stay off so the house could learn my new rules. It wasn't about punishing anyone. It was about protecting the next version of me. The calls slowed. The visits spaced out. The quiet stopped echoing and started sounding like room. Once the quiet started sounding like room, I knew what to do with it. I scrolled to Hannah Walker and found an honest excuse that wasn't the whole truth: the old Ford I'd noticed by her barn. Mind if I come look? I asked steady like I was talking parts and not trying to borrow a little piece. She said yes with that no-frills tone country folks use when help and boundaries both matter. Duke and Daisy barked hello over the line like they remembered my boots. I shaved, changed my shirt, and told myself it was just business check. The VIN eyeball. The frame maybe line up a buyer in Bourne. On the drive out, the hill country felt less like a backdrop and more like a place a man could reset without admitting he needed to. The ranch came up the way good things do, unhurried. Hannah met me at the gate, ball cap, low eyes level. Truck's out back, she said. Coffee's inside. Both were offers and both were tests. I took the coffee first. A man should be clear-headed when he looks at value. We started with metal because that's safer than hearts. The Ford wore its year's honest sun-checked paint, straight lines, a cab that smelled like grease and stories. We kicked tires, checked rust, called it a runner with a little love. Then she waved me toward the kitchen like it wasn't a favor at all. Fried chicken hit the table, cornbread split open, and a jar of honey found its way between us without ceremony. We ate the way people do who've worked all morning, quiet, grateful, no fuss. After Hannah said walk, and we followed a cow path down to the Guadalupe. The river moved like a man who knows where he's going, no hurry, no apology. We stood where shade meets water boots, biting limestone, and watched a dragonfly balance on a reed like it had made a deal with the wind. I felt the road leave my shoulders one notch. That's when small talk ran out, and the kind that matters started. The river did what good counselors do, kept its voice low, and let us say what we needed to say. I told the simple version first. No heroics, no villains, just a marriage that cracked a dance hall where respect slipped, and a night when a man has to choose quiet over chaos. Hannah didn't flinch, didn't fish for the dirty parts. She listened like a vet checks a horse. Hand steady questions, short eyes on the truth. When she spoke, it wasn't gossip. It was history. Her ex had hands that move fast when words failed, the kind of temper that kicks doors and then cries about the hinges. There was a restraining order, a few close calls, and a hard-won calm. She wasn't trading back for anything. We didn't trade pity. We traded boundaries, what we won't swallow again, what we won't explain away, what a second chance has to cost to be worth it. I told her about proof and how heavy a phone can feel. She told me about fear and how light a house gets when the wrong boots stop showing up. The river said nothing and agreed with both of us. We stood there longer than we planned. When the hard parts were said, the light parts earned their way back in. A turtle popped up midstream like he'd been eavesdropping and decided we'd passed. Hannah laughed first short, real the kind that doesn't apologize for being happy in front of old wounds. I answered with the sound a man makes when he finally believes someone isn't grading his answers. We drifted into the everyday the calf that won't respect a gate, the cashier in town who rounds in your favor if you bring her peaches, the way Duke pretends he can't hear kennel unless you spell it. She nudged a pebble with her boot out and said, "Hope's a muscle. You let it atrophy, it won't lift a thing." I told her mine had been doing push-ups in the dark without telling me. On the walk back, we found the kind of silence that's full, not empty. She handed me leftover chicken like it was a handshake for next time. I didn't say I wanted next time. I didn't have to. The dogs wagged like they'd already put it on the calendar. After that, my maps changed without me redrawing them. Routes I used to run straight started bending toward TX16, and I caught myself timing fuel drops to land near the ranch at decent hours. I brought coffee, once fence staples another time, and a new lead for Daisy after she chewed through the old one like a teenager with a pencil. We stayed sensible porch talks, daylight, goodbyes, work in the gap between. But Sense has room for steady. She'd text a photo of the Ford after it turned over. I'd send one of a sunrise from US 281 that looked like somebody finally turned the world right side up. The ranch learned my footsteps. The dogs decided I belonged. And somewhere between tightening a loose hinge on her screen door and washing grease off my hands at her porch sink, I felt it something growing that didn't ask permission because it didn't need it. Men my age don't fall. We choose. I chose to keep showing up. That's how feelings get honest, mile by mile, chore by chore, until the gate feels like part of your day. By then, choosing to show up felt like muscle memory, so when Saturday rolled around, I asked Hannah to the dance hall. Nothing secret, nothing sideways. We walked in hand, and I swear the room shifted a notch like a transmission, finding the right gear. Neon warmed the wood. The band eased into a two-step that fit us without trying. Folks we knew gave those small nods you get when the town's seen you through worse. I wasn't making a point. I was making a life. Hannah's palm was steady in mine, not steering just there like a post you tie to so the river can't take you. We did a slow lap, then another, and for a minute I forgot the old story even had pages left. I saw our reflection in the front bar mirror, two people about the same age, carrying different scars, moving in the same direction. When the song ended, I kissed her temple, plain public honest, and felt the room accept it. That's when the air changed. The kind of change you don't hear. First, you sense it like weather turning before the sky does. The weather had a name, Trent Dawson. I didn't clock him until he was in my space jaw. forward, eyes bright with the kind of courage that only comes bottled. "We're done here," he said to Hannah, "not to me." And then his fist said the next part. "I've taken hits before. This one I heard in my teeth." The crowd did that animal flinch and then expanded a circle nobody drew, but everybody understood. I stepped back, hands up, not to square off, but to keep from giving a lawyer free work. Hannah got between us, voice low and fierce, "Trent, no." And for a second, I saw what she'd lived with a man who mistakes volume for strength. A bouncer shouldered through. Friends reached, grabbed, missed. The band cut mid-bar the way good bands do when the floor stops being a floor. I kept my feet and my mouth, both because some nights, the only thing you own is your posture. He lunged again, sloppy wide, and I braced, planning to end it without feeding it. That's when the night found a worse idea than fighting. Chaos talks in fragments. A chair scrape, a gasp, a boot, slip, a voice too loud. Then came the sound that stops a room glass breaking in air, not on a table. Someone threw something bottle mug courage, and it burst near the doorway light, scattering like a handful of bad decisions. People ducked. Cursed reached for strangers they swore they didn't know 5 minutes ago. I turned with the crowd scanning for Hannah, for exits for the bouncer who'd promised to handle Trent. The floor went from music to math angles bodies where not to step. My cheek throbbed in time with the snare that wasn't playing anymore. I called Hannah's name once hard enough to cut through the noise and saw her near the wall, eyes on me, hand up, "I'm okay." Relief hit like cold water. Then the silence arrived, the wrong kind, the kind packed with people and still empty. It came from the center of the blast, a shape on the ground, a man kneeling, a woman not moving. I pushed through elbows and apologies, already knowing what my stomach wouldn't let my brain say. I broke into the circle and the world narrowed to a face I knew too well. Rachel. On her side, hair matted, a thin line of blood running from her temple like somebody had drawn a boundary too late. She blinked slow, trying to find where the ceiling had gone. My knees hit wood before I told them to. "Don't move her," a woman snapped, calm, trained, already pressing a clean bar towel where the cut was worst. Someone called 911, someone else prayed. Trent was gone, herded, hauled, or just evaporated. Hannah was at my shoulder, voice steady, palm on my back like a brace. "Stay with her," the woman said, so I did, saying her name like I could anchor her to it. In my head, the old film spool started the fights, the papers, the porch light, off on purpose, and all of it fell through a trap door. This wasn't a courtroom anymore. This was a body and a night and a choice, bigger than history. Rachel's lips moved. I leaned in to catch the sound. It wasn't a word, it was a reach. I reached back. The siren came thin from a mile out, building a countdown nobody asked for. Around us, the dance hall stood frozen band, silent beers sweating 100 people learning how fast good time turns into what now. I kept my hand where the medic would want it when they took over, and I kept my voice low, not for Rachel, but for me. Hannah fielded a cop's first questions with the patience of someone who's signed restraining orders and knows the value of clean sentences. When the EMTs hit the floor, we moved like furniture out of the way, ready when needed. Then came the moment every man recognizes, the one where your map gets rewritten while you stand there watching. Whatever road I thought I was on, new love, clean break, simple forward, that road just sprouted a detour shaped like a hospital, a decision and a past that refuses to stay in its lane. As they rolled Rachel out, her eyes found mine for half a second. Not accusation, not apology, something worse, dependence. I followed the gurney. The life I'd planned waited by the door and didn't argue. I followed the gurney through doors that open for anyone and close on everyone the same. Methodist Hospital San Antonio smelled like lemon cleaner and long nights. A doctor with tired eyes and a steady voice gave me the kind of truth that doesn't ask how you feel about it. Blunt head trauma, he said, tapping the scan, likely memory loss. Think of it like a shelf that tipped some years slide off. I nodded like men do when they'd rather fix a carburetor than a brain. He talked tests, observation timelines that don't respect calendars. I heard one phrase clearly she may not remember recent years. Divorce. Dance hall. The whole crooked trail that led here gone like rain on Caliche. I signed the papers you sign when you're not next of kin, but you still care. Then found a chair by a window that only showed my reflection. Hannah sat beside me without taking the space over her hand on my shoulder like a brace you don't have to earn. The vending machine coffee tasted like midnight. The clock didn't move. I did what men do when waiting is the job I stayed. Morning came in strips through cheap blinds, and with it, a nurse who said, "She's asking for you." I walked into a room that made Rachel look small. Bandage at the temple, monitors whispering like they had secrets to keep. Her eyes found me, fast recognition clean, not puzzled, and for a heartbeat, I was back at our kitchen table before we learned new words for tired. She reached for my hand like the body remembers what the mind can't. "Jack, where's my wedding ring? I put it on yesterday." Yesterday to her lived years ago. The air thinned. I looked at her left hand, pale where a band used to be, and swallowed the kind of answer that breaks whatever's left. A good man doesn't lie to a patient. A decent man doesn't drop a wrecking ball on a healing brain. So I said the one true thing I could hold. "You're safe. We're figuring this out. I'm right here." Her fingers tightened relief like a child's after a bad dream. The monitor agreed. I kept my voice even. My chest didn't. "There's a ring in a dresser back in Bourne, hers quiet as a coin you don't spend anymore." I could see it while I stood by her bed, gold remembering a promise we couldn't keep. The doctor called what she had retrograde like the past got put in reverse. He said sometimes pieces come back when the world hands you the right key, a smell, a place, a fight you wish you'd skipped. I thought about that phone file in my truck, heavy as a cinder block I keep hauling around. I thought about the night I learned a marriage can be both true once and false now. Men like me try to sort life with wrenches and labels. This didn't sort. I stepped into the hallway and counted tiles until the anger bled out and the pity didn't take over. When I walked back in, she was dozing. I set the chair where she'd see me first and let my eyes sting in private. There's a mercy in holding still when you want to fix. There's a cost too. Both were due. Michelle showed up with a tote bag and the face of a woman who's done more than her share of middle-of-the-night errands. She hugged me like family that survived paperwork and still chooses each other. Out in the waiting area, she spoke plain. "Jack, the doctors think she's living in an old version of your life. Don't make promises you can't keep to this version." I nodded because she was right and because I wanted her to be. If her memory crawls back, it won't change what happened. Michelle said, eyes steady. "Don't let guilt dress up as love." That line hit like wisdom forged on a hard anvil. We walked through the what-ifs, her parents, the house, the inevitable questions about dates and decisions. Michelle set a boundary I couldn't argue with. Tell the truth, but only what she can carry. She squeezed my hand once and went to sit with her sister, brushing hair off a forehead that had once leaned against mine in a different life. I watched them and realized I'd been offered something men don't get, everyday permission to choose carefully. When the room emptied and the machines settled into their small choir, Hannah took my hand the way she always does. "No squeeze for show, just steady. Follow your heart," she said, not as a slogan, as a direction. I could have laughed if it didn't feel like crying. Hearts aren't great with maps. But then she added the part that mattered. "Your heart today, Jack." Not the one from 3 years ago. She wasn't asking me to sprint. She was asking me not to run backwards. I told her about the ring, the file, the version of me that wants to fix everything with one clean speech. She shook her head. "You don't owe anyone a performance. You owe them clarity." In that chair, under hospital light, that makes everyone look like they've told the truth too long, I chose the only compass that's any good, present tense. Be kind. Be clear. Don't pretend a past is a future. Hannah kissed my cheek light, as a promise you can keep. I looked at the door to Rachel's room and knew the next words had to fit the man I am now. So I walked back in with present tense stitched to my backbone, and Rachel met me with yesterday in her eyes. She was clearer, softer, searching my face for the version of us that wore rings and traded grocery lists. "We're okay, right?" she whispered like the room might grade her answer. "We were talking about kids. You remember, a little boy with your eyes." That line hit places I thought I'd boarded up. I pulled the chair close and let my voice do what the heart couldn't hold steady. "You and I had good years," I said, "and I'm grateful for them." She blinked, confused, hopeful, holding the edge of a blanket like a raft. "So, we're still us." The doctor had warned me. "Tell the truth she can carry. You're safe. You're loved. But we're not where you think we are." Her mouth trembled, and for a second I saw the girl from our porch in Bourne. I didn't hand her the wreckage. I handed her the rail. One day at a time, I said, "Healing first." The monitor agreed. My pulse didn't. Leaving that room, I wanted to be the man who could split himself, protect yesterday, honor today. But men who try to be two people end up lying to both. Hannah waited by the window, thumb tracing lazy circles on my palm like she was sanding a rough edge smooth. "You do right by her," she said. "Just don't do wrong by us." The line was simple, impossible, and exactly correct. I met Michelle for coffee and we drafted a plan, the way you draft a will. Quiet, careful, no poetry. Visits with limits. Updates that don't rewrite history. No promises I couldn't keep. Then I went back to Rachel and put it plain. "I care about you," I said, "and I won't disappear. But I can't pretend the marriage still exists. That wouldn't help either of us." She stared at the ring groove on her hand like it might fill itself. I stayed until she slept, then walked out into Texas heat that made the hospital glass feel like a mirror you can't dodge. Choosing forward isn't brave. It's honest. Sometimes honest is the only strength left. Time did what time does when you stop wrestling it, it moved. Rehab became Rachel's new job. Balance drills, memory prompts, the slow work of stitching days back together. That's where Jason Reed entered steady hands, even voice a way of looking at progress that made failure feel temporary. I watched from a reasonable distance and liked him before I meant to. He didn't crowd, didn't perform. He just showed up early and stayed till the plan was done. They started with reps and ended with laughter that didn't apologize for being in a therapy room. Michelle caught me in the hallway one afternoon, relief on her face I hadn't seen in years. "She's finding new," she said. It wasn't my job to bless it, but I did in my chest with a breath I hadn't allowed since the dance hall. The day Rachel introduced us, Jason shook my hand without flinching. "You've both been through it," he said, like a fact, not a judgment. I drove home thinking about how endings make room. Some men hate detours. I'm learning they're how you actually arrive. With Rachel building forward, I looked at Bourne the way you look at a truck you've kept running out of habit. It had done its job. It wasn't my road anymore. I boxed up the tools, patched the nail holes, and signed the papers with that straight-line signature you use when your hand's steady because your mind is. The house didn't fight me. It let me go. Then I turned my roots toward TX16 for good. Hannah's ranch met me with work that made sense. Fix a hinge, mend a fence, hold a ladder while someone you trust climbs. Evenings smelled like cedar and hot iron. Mornings tasted like coffee and the kind of quiet a man earns. We walked the property, talked about a room addition that would catch the north light, argued pleasantly about tile like people who planned to sweep the same floor for a long while. Duke and Daisy trailed us convinced every stake we set was a promise. Maybe it was. I wasn't falling. I was choosing a gate that opens a river that keeps moving a life that meets me where I stand. Life taught me a clean truth. Betrayal can break your past, but it doesn't get to define your future. Rachel has hers now, steady, honest, building something new with a good man. I have Hannah, not a rescue, not a rebound, just the kind of love that shows up at daylight and still means it by dark. We added a room to the ranch that catches the north light. Some mornings we sit quiet and let the hill country wake around us, cedar on the air dogs at our boots, coffee cooling slower than we talk. I don't rewrite what happened. I don't run from it either. A storm rolled through my life, and it did what storms do, cleared the sky. Under that clean blue, I learned the only vow a man can keep without breaking. Be present, be decent, and keep walking the road that tells the truth back to you. If you're standing where I stood, ring groove on your hand, heart loud in your chest, answer this for yourself and mean it out loud. Do you go back or do you go forward? Drop your word below. I'll read every single one.